the Trinity, and we explain that to other people, knowing that it is a core Christian doctrine. But people say, well, that seems like it's only in the New Testament, and they don't look to the Old Testament. They don't see how the new is a fulfillment of the Old, and it's actually more accurate sometimes to say Old Covenant and New Covenant to be a little bit more precise about what we find represented there. How does the Trinity relate to the Old Testament Jewish monotheism?
Yeah, very important doctrine, and very important to have an understanding of how it is derived biblically. In terms of the Old Testament, it's certainly true that the Hebrews, Jews, do not accept the Trinity. They believe that God is one being, one person, a more traditional monotheism. But when you look at the Old Testament, for example, the most important creed in the Old Testament is Deuteronomy 6:4. It's called the Shema. Shema means hear, because the verse states, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." So while that creed is often understood as affirming a traditional monotheism, really the Shema can't be understood to include the doctrine of the Trinity. For example, the word God, Elohim, is a quantitative plural, kind of a puzzling idea there, that the one God would include a plurality. Moreover, when it says that God is one, Ehad, it is not a mathematical one. It includes diversity, because in the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve are said to be one flesh. And so the most important statement about God's oneness in the Old Testament can allow for a unity and diversity, a unity of God's nature, plurality of personhood. Now again, Jews don't understand it that way, but the Shema can be taken that way. Furthermore, there are other passages. God is spoken of in the plural, in the book of Genesis and other places in the Old Testament. I'm not saying that that has to be a reference to the Trinity, but I am saying that it allows for the doctrine of the Trinity. And there are other places that talk about the angel of the Lord that would seem to imply that there is plurality of personhood within God's one nature.